Crossovers have been a favorite pastime of humanity since time immemorial. That actually used to be the default way that religion worked. Those other guys' gods are real, but your gods are just stronger than theirs, and you're going to prove it by killing them and burning all their artifacts. In the modern day, capitalism incentivizes crossovers because they make a lot of money. They draw in both audiences and will especially encourage purchases from fans of both. Godzilla has been the king of crossovers as much as the king of the monsters for the now 70 years it's been around. The third Godzilla movie is a crossover with King Kong. Godzilla soon thereafter crossed over with other Toho monsters like Mothra and Rodan before absorbing them into its orbit basically permanently. In 1970, there was a stage show crossover between Godzilla and fellow kaiju mascot Gamera, the only time they have ever officially crossed over outside of a mobile game and a puppet show, and I wish we knew more about it. When Godzilla movies started being aired as double features with Hamtaro movies, they had themselves a little crossover that was so popular you still see the merch for it in stores to this day. And when Hideaki Anno, the director of Neon Genesis Evangelion, directed the 2016 film Shin Godzilla, a multimedia collaboration that continues to this day, began. Let's explore the history of that. So firstly, I should probably explain our subjects. I don't think I really need to explain Godzilla, considering that Godzilla is one of the biggest cultural exports of Japan alongside fellow official ambassadors Hello Kitty and Pikachu, but I should probably explain Shin Godzilla in case you haven't seen it or don't know the context around it. So Shin Godzilla was the first appearance of Godzilla from a Japanese studio in over a decade. Toho took a break from the franchise in 2004 after the 50th anniversary celebration that was Godzilla Final Wars. While they had briefly come back to making Godzilla films at the turn of the millennium in response to the disaster of the first American Godzilla film by Roland Emmerich, the return on investment for each subsequent film made continuing the project impossible, much like the 90s slump that caused the hiatus to begin with, and the 70s hiatus before it. So it was a bit of a surprise when 2 years after the second American Godzilla by Gareth Edwards, a Japanese Godzilla by Hideaki Anno was released. Doubly so because of that director's credit. Hideaki Anno is known almost exclusively for Neon Genesis Evangelion, although cool people might also know him for Re Cutie Honey, the live-action Cutie Honey, the Heisei Gamera making of documentary, Gunbuster, or a ton of animation work on a bunch of classic anime. In fact, his work on Nausicaa for Hayao Miyazaki helped him gain recognition before co-founding Gainax. Anno's skill led to him becoming a lead director at Gainax, helming most of their projects. This is not as perfect a setup as it might seem though. Being a primary director of an animation studio means you end up directing some difficult work too. He directed Nadia the Secret of Blue Water and found himself simultaneously hamstrung by the network, NHK, and Miyazaki's original concept for the show. This suppression of his artistic expression sent Anno into a 4-year depression spiral which culminated in his largest cultural impact, the seminal classic of postmodern anime, Neon Genesis Evangelion. Neon Genesis Evangelion is so many things, but the one thing it is not, much to the dismay of contemporary fans, is literal. Ostensibly, Evangelion is a story of a boy who is supernaturally predisposed to piloting giant mechs to fight enemies, much like Gundam before it or the many boy and his mech anime that Gundam was commenting on in its own subversive way. Unlike Gundam, Evangelion is not about the horrors of war that many previous mech anime had ignored, it is instead about the horrors of the self, the very same horrors that Anno himself was going through. And despite being in conversation with other mech anime historically, Anno's love for Tokusatsu makes this mech vs. kaiju anime draw much more inspiration from Ultraman and Kamen Rider than Gundam or Gigantor. Ultraman, of course, has a direct connection to Godzilla through Mutual Effects director Eiji Tsuburaya, which is an important piece of the puzzle. Despite being originally aired at a children's time slot, Evangelion was slow and introspective. The cool mecha vs. kaiju fights that otherwise would be the focus of a show like this instead largely take a backseat to held shots, crying, yelling, and talking. And even when the mechs are fighting, they are often not all that cool about it. Mild-mannered main character Shinji, hot-headed Asuka, and unemotional Rei are only able to win against each subsequent angel by the skin of their teeth. The angels, the kaijus attempting to destroy the world, are overwhelming opponents and often make the Eva units look impotent, and their pilots incompetent. I mean, they are children after all. By the way, don't worry about the Christian symbology in the show like the angels and many other things. It's more for aesthetics rather than metaphor. Part of what makes the angels so dangerous is their absolute terror fields, AT fields for short, which block all conventional weaponry. The only way to pierce these force fields is your own AT field, which can be used offensively to break through, hence why the secret organization NERV has specifically groomed children to pilot mechs that generate AT fields. Absolute terror is so important to understanding Evangelion. The show centers around the concept of the hedgehog's dilemma, as conceived by German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer. The hedgehog's dilemma describes a group of hedgehogs in the cold, each who wants to come closer to each other but cannot avoid hurting each other with their spines as they move together. Although they desire to be closer, they have to stay a certain degree apart because of their own spines hurting others and the pain of others' spines. This is a metaphor for us, as while we don't have physical spines, our psychological spines make it impossible for us to be truly intimate with each other without risking mutual harm. This process encourages self-isolation, a not too uncommon thought process in depression. The central pillar of Evangelion is that push and pull. The push to reach out to people, the pull to protect yourself from them. Fighting the instinct to retreat behind your spines and using your absolute terror field to push through to other people past their spines and really connect with them. To portray this, Anno used a lot of Freudian and Jungian imagery, like the simultaneous Oedipal and pedophilic nature of Rei being a clone of Shinji's mom, the enigmatic final angel Kaoru being a Jungian shadow and gay lover of Shinji, and the extremely subtle return to the womb way that the pilots enter the mechs made out of their own moms and are surrounded by metaphorical amniotic fluid. None of that is really necessary to understand the show though. It's extremely blunt. One of the episodes is literally called The Hedgehog's Dilemma, and they explain the whole concept of it to you directly. The only thing that's missing is the characters turning to the audience and saying, "This is what the show is about." The show even ends with 2 episodes that take place basically entirely inside Shinji's own mind, where he has to break through the wall of his negative emotions and realize that he needs others to thrive and accept himself as he actually is. Part of that is an issue of timing constraints, but the effect is still powerful. And despite all of this, fans didn't quite get it. Not all of them understood the more abstract ending. They wanted the comfort of their escapist anime to help isolate themselves from the world that could harm them, despite that being the opposite of the intention of the show. While Anno is a self-described otaku obsessed with tokusatsu series like Godzilla that so clearly inspired Evangelion, he also recognizes the worst traits of his depression spiral rooted deep within otaku culture. Isolated, self-referential, unable to see beyond their own nose. And we are talking about otaku as the Japanese refer to it, not in the American sense, which is just an anime fan, a weeb, if you will. It's a difference, and it does matter. This ending caught the ire of the dark side of the otaku as fans railed against the lack of literal conclusion to the storylines of the show, ignoring, of course, that the metaphorical conclusion was the entire point of the literal things happening in the show. How do you watch a show that holds in the long shot of 2 characters staring at each other for an entire minute and expect it to end with a cool epic fight? Despite the vitriol, and despite the fact the episodes didn't come out as originally planned, Anno would stand by his finale. But he did still have those original ideas for the show laying around. Luckily, Anno was able to put together a recap movie and an alternate ending of the film that would give the otaku some cool fights to get them watching, but much further drive home the core conceit of Evangelion. You, dear viewer, are Shinji. And you, dear otaku viewer, need to start viewing the people around you as actual human beings to reach out to and grow to understand, not simple players in your story to yell at you or jack off over.
I'm so fucked up.
Anno describes this as fan service that doesn't seem fan service. In other words, it's fan service not because it's something the fans want, but because it's something the fans need. All of this, the excellent animation that drew otakus in, the wonderful storytelling and theming that initially pissed some off but drew in so many more, this is what Hideaki Anno is known for. And he kinda hates it. As Anno has grown in the years after his depression in Evangelion, he seemed to want Evangelion to grow with him. He wanted the series to even grow beyond him and let others leave their mark on the franchise, much like Gundam. This simultaneous push to expand Evangelion beyond him and to revitalize a stagnant anime industry was pretty ambitious. As such, he began work on the project himself in 2002, just 6 years after the end of Evangelion, and 5 years after End of Evangelion. Don't get confused. He wasn't really able to find anyone to step into the role though, as the concept of making more Evangelion was too intimidating for anyone but Anno to do. So in 2005, he stepped in. This would become the Rebuilds, or Evangelion Shingeki Joban, which I'm not telling you to show off because you listen to the way I pronounce that, but because it has the word Shin in it, Japanese for new, and I wanted to point that out because it will become a theme. The Rebuilds are 4 films retelling the story of Evangelion with some major changes, including the addition of a 4th main pilot, Mari Illustrious Makanami, a significant increase in the role of Kaoru, and a new secret organization called Vili, which is a mispronunciation of Wille, which is the German word for will. The first 3 films came out in 2007, 2009, and 2012 respectively, all in relatively normal or even rather quick time for an animated project of this caliber. As you might expect, this kind of production schedule for such important projects wore heavily on Anno, despite him being happy to be recreating Eva without restrictions. He experienced another bout of depression that caused him to delay the final film and work on other projects, like the surprise revival of Godzilla. True to Anno's entire career, Shin Godzilla breaks a lot of the traditional rules of a Godzilla film, while holding true to the core of the character. For the first time since Return of Godzilla, Godzilla appears alone with no one to fight but humanity itself, and for the first time in the history of the franchise, it unseats the original 1954 Godzilla from its seat of permanent canonicity. While Godzilla movies often play with which films in the series' long history were canon and which were not, none of them had ever taken the step to erase the original until the Reiwa era, with Shin Godzilla blazing that new trail. That bold step allows Anno to recontextualize Godzilla to a modern context. And fresh in the minds of Japan during the production of Shin Godzilla was not the nearly 70-year-old bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, nor the accidental bombing of the Lucky Dragon, but instead the 2011 Fukushima nuclear disaster. While Godzilla itself is still a product of nuclear mutation, the shape of the disaster that Godzilla causes and the government's slow and inadequate response to it greatly reflects the Fukushima disaster. Godzilla's naming in this movie drives this home. In Shin Godzilla, the name Godzilla is assigned to the creature by the Americans, much like in the real world, while the name Gojira has been changed from the name of a local Odo Island god in the original to an Odo Island word for God incarnate. Godzilla is no longer a specific god, but God made manifest. It is an act of God, a phrase so often used by governments to avoid the responsibility to the citizens they supposedly represent in times of disaster. This film is not subtle in the slightest.
Post-war Japan is a tributary state.
The characters speak fast and talk in grand statements as a stylistic choice, but the commentary is so clear it becomes satire as the bureaucrats in the government slowly move orders down the chain of command to make sure protocol is followed at every turn, even as Godzilla and the US military bears down upon them. It is critical of the Japanese government, it's critical of the US's treatment of Japan, it's critical of the self-defense force even. Shin Godzilla believes that the only people who can truly save Japan are the weird people, affectionate. The nerdy scientists, the tired low-level civil servants looking to make a difference in a cruel bureaucracy. In other words, the otaku. While Anno might be critical of the otaku and particularly otaku culture, he also believes them capable of greatness, much more so than any government or military. While the right wing, including the now dead Shinzo Abe, tried to claim the film as theirs, I don't think they were actually particularly attentive to the film at all. The military might of Japan isn't what wins the day, but rather people finding another way. While the Fukushima disaster did occur under the Democratic Party, meaning this film has plenty of criticism for the centrist Liberal Party, Shin Godzilla is critical of all who would put the economy before lives, their position of power before the people, or themselves above others. Everything Abe and his Liberal Democratic Party, which is neither, stand for. Shin Godzilla was, finally, a critical darling for the franchise. It might be the first one where contemporary American critics actually took it seriously, possibly because of the abandonment of suits for the CGI monster, although notably much better CGI work than in most Hollywood films, or maybe it's just because of the changing times. This revival of the Japanese Godzilla film led to the Oscar award-winning Godzilla Minus One, and Anno, after finishing the last Evangelion film 3.0 plus 1.0, ridiculous title, was also able to play with some of his favorites, Ultraman and Kamen Rider, making Shin versions of them as well. It's a whole Shin family. Now, we're talking a lot about how Anno did this, Anno did that, and obviously, he didn't do this alone. All along, he was working with a team, many people all working their hardest to bring his vision to light, including a co-director on Shin Godzilla, Shinji Higuchi, who also worked on Evangelion and several Heisei-era kaiju films. The reason we're framing this from Anno's perspective and as Anno's vision is that he reportedly has a large amount of control on the creative direction of his works, which is the main aspect we're analyzing here, in addition to having a hand in basically every step of the process of bringing his works to life. This dude is simultaneously a series director, screenwriter, storyboard artist, key animator, and a mech designer for Evangelion. His fastidious nature when it comes to the theming and plotting specifically makes Anno the primary force in the writing room when we're talking about the meaning and theming of his directorial works. And so Shin Godzilla and Evangelion, connected by that creative vision, became intertwined. And if they are already intertwined, why not start making products for people to buy? This, of course, starts with figures. Bandai and X Plus both released versions of their Kiryu figures with the paint jobs of the Eva units. Bandai gave us a Unit 1 and a Unit 2 paint job, with the Unit 1 actually being locked behind a pre-order of a Shin Godzilla ticket, and X Plus did all 3 main Eva units from the original show. SH Monster Arts created a limited edition repaint of their Rebirth Godzilla mold with the Unit 1 colors as well, which doesn't work as well to me as Mechagodzilla, but whatever. Sega put out some cute figures of Rei and Asuka in their school uniforms holding their little Godzilla plushies, nice and subtle. And Sentinel produced a very interesting figure that presents what if Nerve designed a Mechagodzilla? They call it Shiryu, which means purple dragon, and it's very cool. X Plus also made a couple more figures like this Rei dressed as an Exilian from the 60s movie Invasion of the Astro Monster, and these Godzilla Eva hybrids that show the Eva units going into Berserk mode and unleashing Godzilla mutations instead of their angel parts. This one is important as this fusion becomes a major theme in a lot of the products, including more figures. From here, there were posters, card game tournaments, clothing, and even a symphonic concert that played songs from both Shin Godzilla and Evangelion, and note some of the interesting musical similarities between the two. And then there's mobile games. Mobile games, weapons of mass profits, are of course eager to jump in on any crossover where money is to be made. So we have Monster Strike, which features this really fun idea of Rei clones as the twin Mothra priestesses, and Asuka as a Mechagodzilla pilot wearing the uniform of the pilot from Godzilla against Mechagodzilla, which actually suits her really well. Also, there's Godzilla wearing Eva Unit 1 armor and wielding 2 spears of Longinus. Then we have Kairi Sei Million Arthur, who had Eva pilots as recruitable characters and the original Godzilla design as a boss monster. This game looks like ass though, what the fuck? Super Robot Wars of course got in on the fun in X Omega, where they added the Unit 01 recolor of Kiryu as a playable robot. Most recently, Godzilla Battle Line, a truly terrible mobile game, included a huge number of Eva characters into its Godzilla universe and added the Unit 1 and 2 colored Kiryu. Battle Line loves crossovers, by the way. They also crossed over with the other Shin movies, Shin Ultraman and Shin Kamen Rider, and with Gamera to promote the awful show Gamera Rebirth. None of that though is what I want to talk about in this video. It's all just set dressing and context for the good stuff. First up, Godzilla vs. Evangelion, the real 4D. Godzilla vs. Evangelion The Real 4D was a limited-time 4D ride at Universal Studios Japan in Osaka. That means it was a 3D movie, but you're in a theater that moves and shakes to simulate the experience of being in the events of the film. It followed Evangelion The Real 4D, which itself followed Godzilla The Real 4D. Those two were made for Universal Cool Japan Festival in 2017 and 2018 respectively, and so in 2019 they decided to make a crossover between the two to cap it all off. In the years since Godzilla vs. Evangelion, Toho has moved their 4D rides to Seibu, an amusement park in Tokorozawa, Saitama, much closer to Tokyo. This partnership brought us Godzilla the Ride Giant Monsters Ultimate Battle in 2021, and Godzilla the Ride Great Clash in 2025. Giant Monsters Ultimate Battle actually gave us a prototype of what would become the -1 design of Godzilla a few years early, and a Ghidorah and Rodan to go with it that similarly sit somewhere between a traditional look and the legendary Pictures designs, and Great Clash reunites the -1 team to give us a Mechagodzilla of a similar design ethos. These aren't really important to the Godzilla vs. Evangelion crossover at all, at least not yet, but I think the connections to the actual development of the -1 film are very interesting, especially in the context of Godzilla vs. Evangelion The Real 4D, and other things we'll talk about later. As a 4D experience, it's got a little bit more meat to its story than most of the previous products that have little to no story at all. And that means we have something we can really sink our teeth into. So like most theme park attractions, the storytelling begins before the ride itself. As you wait in line, several in-universe news bulletins let you in on the world building of this crossover. The biggest change here is that Tokyo 3, the setting of the vast majority of Evangelion, has been replaced with Osaka 3. In the wake of the second impact and the obliteration of Old Tokyo, Tokyo 2 was built as a replacement capital. In original Eva, Tokyo 3 was built as a fortress to weather the assault of the Angels, and was to become the new capital of Japan to justify the massive cost of building it. In this ride, they just swapped it to Osaka 3, which assumedly means Osaka was destroyed and rebuilt and replaced as well? Or maybe destroyed twice even? You might be wondering why make such an insignificant change. Well, it's because Universal Studios Japan is in Osaka, so they want the story to take place in Osaka to help with immersion. It's the same idea behind the Godzilla theme park in Awaji Island having the lore that Godzilla was lured to the island and trapped trapped there for you to investigate. The theme park is taking an extra unnecessary step so that your brain doesn't have to. It probably wouldn't be a huge deal if you suddenly step from Osaka to Tokyo 3, but making it Osaka 3 makes it that much easier, especially since then you can put in little references for the Osaka crowd. Plus, there's a bit of a city rivalry between Tokyo and Osaka. While I was in Osaka, I saw a guy with a shirt that said, "Fuck Tokyo, I love Osaka," and that's the kind of vibe that would make you want to make a ride in Osaka take place in Osaka instead of Tokyo. Also, I vibed with it heavy. I really like Osaka a lot more than Tokyo. Another panel also warns about an increase in cosmic rays, which also seem to have intensified lightning in the Kansai region. Another reports on a missing asteroid probe that disappeared on its return to Earth. The last picture it took before communication was lost was of a massive shadow with 3 heads on long necks. Once you actually get into the ride itself, NERV's operations director Misato welcomes you, a delegate of some kind, to Osaka 3 and gives you a bit of a rundown on the basic premise of Evangelion. You're being given a tour of the city in a Glauks, a vehicle intended for the ride that picks up the box that is in reality your theater and carries it around the city. Don't worry about that seemingly precarious position though, the box has a parachute if the carrier happens to drop it. Besides, you're in Osaka 3, the most advanced fortress humanity has yet devised. What could possibly go wrong? Anyways, before you could even properly take off on your tour, Shin Godzilla appears and breaks through all of Osaka 3's defenses. This ride does not decide to retroactively place Godzilla in the Evangelion universe. Instead, it seems to be the first appearance of Godzilla, skipping the earlier forms that we saw Shin Godzilla take in the movie. The NERV military apparatus doesn't know what it is or what it's doing here, but they know that they have to get you out of here. So the Glauks takes off, carrying you to an underground evacuation center, as was shown many a times in the show. Fun little note, it looks to me like you're taking off from Dotonbori Canal, or I suppose Dotonbori 3. All of the colorful decorations and advertisement that Dotonbori is known for are also boosted by holograms, including one that shows the classic Godzilla robot, Jet Jaguar. Cute! You travel through Osaka 3 as the buildings recede to be replaced with artillery barrages, all firing away at the mysterious creature who just keeps coming. As you might expect, your Glauks is damaged by another vehicle crashing into it. It drops your crate and the parachutes deploy, leaving you to drift to the ground in front of a god incarnate. Just before you will be stomped and crushed to death by the uncaring creature, Unit 1 picks you up and takes you out of the monster's path. Shinji then lets you get a good look at the monster, mostly because it's a theme park ride, but also seemingly so NERV can use your vehicle to analyze the creature, including an estimate of its height that rounds up to make it seem larger than the legendary Godzilla, and its temperature, which allows NERV Command to realize that this isn't just a monster, but also a living nuclear reactor. With this analysis complete and NERV Command now in a panic about the size and power of the creature, Asuka suddenly arrives in Unit 2 to attack Godzilla. She is easily knocked aside as Rei in Unit 0 fires at Godzilla with one of the massive guns stationed around the city. Asuka comes in for another attack on the sluggish creature, but none of it has any effect, and Godzilla knocks them all aside with its massive tail, the first active action it takes. None of the unit's attempts to wrestle Godzilla really do anything, and when Shinji goes to punch it in the face, Godzilla chomps down on his wrist. That's gotta hurt. Unit 1 is only freed by the combined efforts of Asuka and Rei, and even then, it and you find yourself shoved through an entire building. At this point, Shinji picks you up again and gets you attached to a new magnetic lock flying vehicle that is basically only distinct from a Glauks in that it has helicopter blades instead of some sort of hover technology. I don't know what the point of that is. It just is. But perfect! Now you can escape. Or you could just stick around and watch from a slightly safe distance. That works too. The AV units continue to attempt to wrestle Godzilla, seemingly doing little other than annoying him, and then he starts to glow purple. Uh-oh. Your analyzing systems turn on again, so I guess that's why you're still there, to serve as the eyes for NERV, and Godzilla's levels are off the charts, completely unmeasurable. It winds up its beam attack, which could mean the end of the Evas, but then fires it into the sky. The beam seems to hit something in the sky and explodes. That explosion coalesces into the shape of King Ghidorah, a reference to how Ghidorah arrived in the Showa-era movies. Now this is interesting to me. Ghidorah is a classic monster of the Godzilla franchise, having appeared at least once in every era besides the most recent Reiwa era, which currently consists of 2 movies. And even then, it's still in the anime movies and the American films. Almost always a villain, Ghidorah sits alongside Mechagodzilla as an ultimate nemesis of Godzilla. Shin Godzilla is a bit different. Shin Godzilla has a unique design. It's sluggish, uncaring, seemingly not built for a kaiju fight. Despite many calls for it from the fans, I don't think there was ever any intention for a sequel where Shin Godzilla is brawling it out with Anguirus or something. And as we all know by now, Anno doesn't care what the fans want, he gives them what they need. But Toho Studios, owner of the Godzilla franchise and brand, has no such compunctions. And Kara, Anno's current studio and owner of the Evangelion franchise, seems to be willing to let them do that as long as it means money coming in to fuel Anno's future projects, like a Battleship Yamato, or G-Cux. Apparently they did the animation for Fire Emblem Echoes Shadows of Valentia? Sorry, I got sucked into a rabbit hole there. So with Ghidorah joining the Shin Godzilla universe, one that is so full of meaning and metaphor, what is Ghidorah? Not even to mention the Evangelion universe, also full of metaphor of a different scale. That's what fascinates me about this crossover, right? Godzilla is a tale of governmental failure in the wake of disaster. Evangelion about the ways in which we build up walls to protect ourselves from others and only end up hurting ourselves more. The through line is the power of human connections to make a better world. So how does that apply to this crossover? Well, let's think about that until the end of the ride. I'll let you think up your own conclusion before I give you mine. Think of it as a reading comprehension workshop. In the meantime, let's talk about Ghidorah in a more literal sense. Since Shin Godzilla is such a wild departure in character design for the monster, you can't just shove a traditional King Ghidorah design in here and expect it to fly. Well, it would probably still fly because it is King Ghidorah, but it's not going to go over well. You have to reinvent King Ghidorah's design as well. And they actually did a good job with this. They designed this Ghidorah, Shin Ghidorah as it's called in the fan community, to look like it belongs in the same world as Shin Godzilla without just copying the same design features over. Shin Ghidorah does have gnarled flesh, intimidating teeth, and a distinctly alien appearance and demeanor, but its glimmering golden scales reflect light at all times to make the creature shimmer in a disconcerting way. That's partly because Ghidorah's very presence causes tons of lightning from those cosmic rays that were foreshadowed before the ride. Those scales also perfectly interlock into an unending symmetry along its body. Instead of the traditional pom-poms, this Ghidorah's tail features inward-pointing claws that seem like they'd be able to grab something, but never do. Much like how Godzilla has its awkward and withered stubby arms, Ghidorah has weird, stocky legs that don't look quite right. Instead of walking with them or flapping its massive wings, it slithers through the air like a snake, using its mastery over gravity to make fools of all of us stuck to the planet's surface. Speaking of gravity, the team decided to heavily emphasize the gravity aspect of the gravity beams, the lightning-like beams that Ghidorah shoots from its mouth. Those beams are called gravity beams seemingly because it sounds cool, and gravity's like a space word, and Ghidorah is an alien monster from space. They don't really have many properties that remind you of gravity. When they hit things, they explode or melt, which you could maybe stretch as being because the gravity suddenly increases, but I feel like that's a bit of a stretch. I think this is just a rule of cool issue. Godzilla Final Wars in 2004 was the first to play around with this by giving their version of Ghidorah, Kaiser Ghidorah, the ability to lift Godzilla in the air and then slam him down with its beams. They call those anti-gravity beams destroyed Kaiser, because it sounds cool. The version of King Ghidorah from Rebirth of Mothra 3 also had anti-gravity beams in addition to the gravity beams, but they were just more lightning. But purple this time, and coming from the wings, woo! Shin Ghidorah's gravity beams merge the two. The dragon itself is able to ignore gravity, and its beams allow it to make buildings float and become projectiles of their own with a command that seemingly emanates from the wings. Each of those beams is preceded by a spotlight that reveals the target, giving them a convenient amount of leeway to dodge. This is meant to reflect the build-up time that Godzilla initially requires to use its beam, and also gives the Evas a chance to actually win. This is very important because as we see when Godzilla and the Eva units join forces to stop Ghidorah, those beams are capable of breaking through an AT field. Meanwhile, Godzilla's beam seems to refract off of Ghidorah, splitting around the monster instead. Realizing that Godzilla is not here for them or the city, but for Ghidorah, the Eva units target Ghidorah exclusively instead, dodging and weaving around the gravity beams as best they can. Ghidorah eventually lands a hit, blasting through Rei's AT field and sending too many buildings with Asuka for her to deflect. Ghidorah barely even respects them as a threat and moves on to strangle Godzilla, curling around the creature like a snake until Godzilla unleashes the dorsal fin beams. You can't see that happening in the footage because of this person's head, but I'm pretty sure that's what's going on. Unfortunately, those beams destroy your carrier again and Rei has to save you. While your carrier undocks and flies off, Godzilla sends out another beam at Ghidorah until it just gives out. No more beam, no more glow. Godzilla goes into a state of suspended animation, like in the movie after it destroyed Tokyo in the wake of the bunker busters being deployed, or when they exhausted Godzilla's beam until they could deploy the coagulant to freeze its core. Now it's up to the Nerve team to stop the golden creature. Luckily for them, Godzilla's last attack managed to finally pierce a hole in Ghidorah's armor. The three mechs run for Ghidorah, Asuka climbs a tower to reach the now flying monster and manages to grab its leg. Rei grabs her leg, and now the two of them have access to the weak point. Unfortunately, being in one place means the charge time for the gravity beams don't matter as much anymore, and Ghidorah shoots at Asuka until one of them hits and shatters her AT field. Rei also falls, sending your crate flying. As you fly through the air, your camera zooms in on Shinji, who has grabbed the Tsutenkaku Tower in Shinsekai. Highly recommend the Joytail in that area, by the way. He tears off the top of the tower, which has been converted into another Eva weapon storage unit, and reveals a sword. He runs to catch your crate, still sailing through the air, probably aided by gravity beam anti-gravity, and does some parkour off of Godzilla's tail to reach you, but still fails. Instead, he redirects into a sword thrust right at Ghidorah's weak spot. He hits, and blue light spills all over you as Asuka saves you from gravity, non-beam form. Ghidorah then crashes middle head first into a building. The pilots then wonder aloud if they've finally won, but no. Of course not. Ghidorah doesn't go down that easily. A spotlight emanates from the rubble and gravity beams strike Godzilla. This was a mistake though, as Godzilla just absorbs the radiation from them and awakens. Godzilla charges up and fires its own beam, creating a classic beam battle that Ghidorah quickly loses, exploding into a rainbow-colored conflagration. The AV units shield you from the blast, causing your view to go black until they set you down. You connect into the view of another vehicle that watches as Godzilla swims away without a fight, done with Osaka 3 now that Ghidorah is dead. The Nerve team wonder aloud about Godzilla until another carrier arrives to take you back, and Shinji offers a hand to help, as if your crate has any means to accept that hand. So I have thoughts about this. Firstly, the sillier thought I have is that I'm not used to the AV units being this competent. I'm most familiar with the show, where there's less of the cool, badass moments of the movies, and more fuck-ups or panic attacks that prevent the cool stuff from happening. Also, the lack of AT fields of their enemies sure seems to make it easier for them to do things, even if the things that they're doing aren't actually making any progress. I think they mostly just end up giving the air of competence, even though they basically just further the weakening that Godzilla had already started. Now, obviously, in the movie, Shin Godzilla is initially severely damaged by bunker busters, which are conventional weaponry, although very powerful conventional weaponry. Many fans on various forums seem convinced that this and Godzilla running out of energy makes it weak in comparison to other incarnations, but the thing they don't get is that Shin Godzilla is inevitable. It doesn't die, and every time you hurt it, it rapidly evolves to stop that from happening again. At the end of the movie, it was about to turn into a series of winged humanoid Godzillas that were going to annihilate the world. That's what you're dealing with here, which is why it can shrug off the Avas. That, plus it doesn't have a big glowing weak point that's only protected by an AT field, which the Avas are specifically designed to break. That does bring me to another thought though. While this Godzilla has the looks and abilities of the penultimate evolutionary stage of Shin Godzilla, it doesn't really act much like it. Like, it moves slow and it doesn't react much like Shin, but it doesn't evolve, it doesn't try to kill the Avas when they attack, and its goal is to save the world from Ghidorah and then leave peacefully afterwards. That's just not how Shin Godzilla works in the movie. This represents a shift in character reminiscent of how the original Godzilla went from an atomic agent of destruction to a savior of Japan, although on a much faster timescale since we know that shift already. Clearly an attempt to have the cake of combining Anno's two works together, while eating it too by having the non-Anno Godzilla temperament. If you replace Shin Godzilla with the Heisei era form, it would likely fit better. This is not just pointless fan-wiki analysis, it's actually what helps lead me to my interpretation of Ghidorah and this 4D experience as a whole. This shift in Godzilla's behavior expands his role from purely the Fukushima disaster. That disaster was caused by an earthquake and a tsunami, an act of God as we said earlier, or we can shift that to an act of nature. Godzilla is now the Earth, not the people on it, but the Earth itself, much like older incarnations. Shinji is, as always, the audience surrogate, although in this case you're also in the show yourself in your little crate, a more literal audience surrogate. Just don't mind that. Asuka and Rei are the people who surround Shinji, the people he needs to recognize as people of their own instead of the versions he has of them in his head. Their work together with the work of Godzilla is what brings the outsider down, the alien Ghidorah. It unnaturally floats through the air, unrestricted by gravity, and changes the environment around it. It's climate change. Ghidorah is climate change, or more specifically, it's global adversity as a whole, with the forefront issue being climate change. If we can reach out to others and to nature, we can change things for the better. Now, the fact that Shin Godzilla looks like a weathered victim of a nuclear blast, a conscious choice of that film, kinda hurts that interpretation, but again, that's alleviated if you just picture an earlier Godzilla in its place. Besides, it was always going to be a weaker theme when we're dealing with the theme park equivalent of smashing Anno's toys together. Speaking of toys, you can bet your ass that the Universal Gift Store had merch for this show. Unfortunately, it all kind of looks like ass. The figures look cheap and nasty, which is unfortunate for Shin Ghidorah, as it's the only figure it'll probably ever get. The designs on the tote bags, mugs, and cookies are mostly just text. The hat is funny, but it looks kind of cheap. The drink looks like it'll kill you. And the Unit 1 Kiryu popcorn bucket actually looks surprisingly nice, but I can't help imagining you taking that popcorn bucket into the 4D theater and then spilling popcorn all over everyone as Godzilla knocks you out of the sky. Still wouldn't mind having it though, were it not $200 on online auction sites. That rough looking Ghidorah vinyl is around the same price too. Like I said, it's probably the only figure that design will ever get. But if you think the real 4D is smashing toys together, just wait until you see our final subjects, P Godzilla vs. Evangelion G Cell Awakening, and P Godzilla vs. Evangelion Second Impact G. The P stands for Pachinko! These are Pachinko machines! Let's go gambling! And here's where I have to give a warning. Pachinko machines are gambling machines. They use a legal loophole where you win prize tokens, and then there happen to be people nearby willing to buy the prize tokens off of you for set amounts. If you're sensitive to issues of gambling, this might be a hard part of the video for you. Additionally, in order to optimize their addictive qualities, Pachinko machines are nightmares of lights and sounds. If you're sensitive to flashing lights, you might want to dip out too. I'll be removing a lot of the annoying sounds myself, so don't worry about that too much, but the lights I can only do so much with. Also, while we're interrupting the flow of the video, I might as well say that because of the nature of this video, I am very likely to get demonetized here. Hell, it's going to be hard to avoid the video getting blocked as a whole, so if you're seeing this, I probably already did a lot of re-editing to get here. And re-uploading. Since I probably won't make any money off of all of that work and rework, I guess that you consider helping me out on Patreon or Ko-fi if you like videos like this to support my ability to make more of them. You may have noticed that the intro is a little shorter than you might have expected it to be, and that's one of the things I did to help avoid being hit here. You can of course see the full version on my Patreon and get an additional bonus video that is a companion piece to this video. It contains some tangents I didn't really feel fit this video. Alright, let's get back to talking about Godzilla and Evangelion. So at this point, I should probably explain how Pachinko machines work a little bit so you understand why there's going to be some ambiguity here. So it's a little bit like Plinko. You have a board with pegs and you make the balls fall down it and then land in places that determine your winnings. But in this case, you grab a bunch of small steel balls from the counter, go over to your machine, and then launch the balls with a firing mechanism, which can also control the speed that they're fired at. They can either go down to the bottom, or fall through holes and be claimed by the machine, or they can land in a cup to be brought back to you. If the cup is a jackpot, you get more balls, which can be converted for prize tokens that can be sold for money to a convenient man outside the parlor. Or you could reinvest them to try and get more balls. Never stop gambling. On the modern computerized machines, once you dial in your stream of balls, you start to hit the bonuses that roll essentially a slot machine. If the numbers match, you get a bonus, and the value of those numbers matters. Usually even numbers are worse, while the odd numbers are varying quality, with 7 being the best, like the classic slot machine jackpot. The bonus they give you is increasing your chances of getting more bonuses, and thus more balls. That also means you can get more spins on the slot machine, which might give you more chances for bonuses. You'll also start getting cutscenes playing on the video screen in the background, with rarer ones even activating animatronic parts of the machine. That's right, you're not just gambling for money, but also for the chance to see the cutscenes you're theoretically playing the machine for. When it comes to Godzilla vs. Evangelion, these consist of 3 categories of cutscene. First, you have the build-up. These cutscenes play as a fluff-filled transition from the normal gambling scene to a more interesting scene. These don't really advance the story of the game in any way, and they don't have a whole lot going on besides building tension for the reveal of the next thing. They include scenes of Shinji and Asuka arguing with each other before something appears on the giant TV screen, Rei waiting in an elevator for a long time like that one scene from the show, or Eva units being launched to the surface from the underground bunkers, all with UI elements added on to build hype around what the slot machine is going to roll next. Second, we have a brawl, just a one-on-one fight scene between 2 characters. These fights also don't advance the plot since they're strictly non-canonical as best I can tell. They just serve to have something exciting happen while you gamble. You control one of the Eva pilots or Godzilla as they fight a kaiju. And when I say control, I mean that in the loosest sense of the term. Your only means of interacting with the game are the ball launcher, a big power button you need to hit in fights or spam to get back up, and a lever to pull in specific situations. In the first game, these fights are against a bunch of iconic angels from Evangelion, or Godzilla specifically. And in the second game, you're against Rodan, Mechagodzilla, Gigan, Kaiser Ghidorah, or Godzilla again. The odds of winning these fights seem to be low, so I saw a lot of footage of Eva's, particularly Unit 1, getting slapped around by kaiju. That's the Shinji I know. We also get to have a Godzilla vs. Angel fight, which shows us that Godzilla is in fact capable of breaking an AT field. Third, we have these story cutscenes, the ones which actually show you what you came here to see. There aren't very many of these, and they are rare to find. I combed through hours of Pachinko footage to find all that I could, and I'm still left with big questions about the plot and even just the order of events for these games. But I have pieced as much of it together as I can to present to you today, so let's go. Unlike the real 4D, Pachinko vs. Godzilla vs. Evangelion does combine both universes together. Instead of just plopping Godzilla in, manipulative mastermind and head of nerve Gendo Ikari explains that the events of the movie Shin Godzilla happened sometime in the past before the second impact, and even references that Godzilla is a God incarnate. Where that puts it in relation to the angels is up to the interpretation of the audience. Because Shin Godzilla is a standalone film that eschewed all previous Godzilla entries, that's actually a pretty easy pill to swallow for the sake of this story. It all works out just fine pretty much, except for what happened with the frozen Godzilla ready to mutate at the end of the movie. There we have the same issue as with the 4D show, where they want it to be Shin Godzilla, but for it to behave more like an earlier incarnation of Godzilla that could just show up and team up with the crew and then leave. There's also the teensy problem of this one scene where Misato and Ritsuko are talking in a bar, and Ritsuko mentions collaboration with G-Force? G-Force is a thing that only really exists in the Heisei universe. It's a task force designed to deal with specifically Godzilla and other kaiju as they show up. The concept appears in many other Godzilla movies, but G-Force, the name, is really only specifically of the Heisei era. And the task force that's in Shin Godzilla doesn't really get a name. This means that this scene and the footage I'm about to show you kind of add a little bit of confusion as to whether this was originally designed to have Shin Godzilla in it at all, or whether they wanted the Heisei era Godzilla in instead. I don't know, kind of seems like they might have wanted the Heisei era Godzilla. Maybe it's not just a feeling that I'm getting, but it's like actually what happened. I don't know, hard to say conclusively at all. But again, just pretend it's the Heisei era Godzilla and it all smooths out. In the modern day of Evangelion, Godzilla returns, much to the surprise of everyone except for Gendo Ikari, who is never surprised by anything because everything is always and forever part of his plan. The defenses of Tokyo 3 are nothing to a god incarnate who just walks right through them, including the trains that slam into him, just like in the movie, and Mr. Kaji in a flying military craft, who almost gets swiped by Godzilla's beams and is saved by an Eva, usually Rei or Mari. If he doesn't get hit, he can get way closer before Shinji has to save him from a point-blank beam blast. There's also this scene of Misato driving through Tokyo 3 trying to get back to base while avoiding the Angel Sachiel and Godzilla as they fight. And I'm not sure the canonicity of this and the presence of the angel to the game. If it is canon and the angels are present in the game beyond the non-canonical brawl scenes, then they don't play a major role at all. The Eva pilots then head out to stop it, performing at least a little better than they did in the 4D show. Mari uses a sniper rifle to explode some large fuel tanks near Godzilla, or Asuka wrestles Godzilla into a building. After one of them does their thing, it leaves an opening for Shinji to slam into Godzilla, who does not react at all other than charging up an energy beam. Shinji dodges out of the way and grabs a rifle, using it to destroy the lower part of a tall building and collapse it onto Godzilla. He jumps on top of the building as well and unloads the gun into Godzilla through the building. Godzilla then bursts through it all with its dorsal beams and also slams Shinji with its tail, sending him flying. If you hit the button in time, Shinji recovers and is able to approach Godzilla, pushing a building forward as covered so that Godzilla can't target him with its beam. The building tilts over and Shinji uses it as a ramp to build up a jump to punch Godzilla in the face. Then the slot machine fails to make a match and Shinji gets blasted away by Godzilla's beam and you lose. I don't know, I never see this one resolve successfully, not sure what's going on here. Is it an always fail or just a low odds of success? Who knows? There's also a chance that Misato helps you by launching a missile at Godzilla, which Shinji can then slam dunk directly onto its target. The missile has some sort of freezing reagent in it and it completely freezes Godzilla. Thanks, Misato. Then Ghidorah appears, seemingly trying to kill anyone with epilepsy. That's right, Ghidorah is in this one too, with a more traditional look, minus one very noticeable detail. King Ghidorah is now also King of the Angels, and sports an angel core to match. Godzilla shoots its beam over Shinji's head at the golden monster and reveals that the angel core isn't just for show either. Ghidorah now has an AT field. This actually strengthens our reading of Ghidorah as climate change, since as we discussed earlier, AT fields are physical representations of the walls people put up around themselves. People are the ones who made climate change, and the people who allowed this to happen have some very big walls to avoid the guilt of what they've done. With the arrival of Ghidorah, Misato realizes very quickly the true threat and orders Nerve to redirect all weapons on the Ghidorah, which obviously can't get through the AT field. If Godzilla's atomic breath can't get through, what hope do tanks have? Shinji rushes into action, dodging both the gravity beams and the atomic breath, and rips open Ghidorah's AT field to allow Godzilla's beam to pierce Ghidorah's angel core. And then this little animatronic pops up, which is like pretty cool, but it covers up the whole screen, and we come back to a giant explosion, and then Godzilla and Unit 1 doing a victory pose together. This makes it a little hard to tell exactly what happens here at the end of this fight. I guess they won? And then we get to probably my biggest question on the order of what's going on in these games. There's a specific scene that I wanted to save for last because it's my favorite from this game, but I have no idea where it happens. It either happens before what I just described, right now after Ghidorah goes away for a day and then comes back later, or it happens after what I'm about to describe. Just based on basic storytelling, it feels more like it would happen on one of the former answers, which will make sense when I describe the next scene that either happens directly after, or after Ghidorah takes a little nap to recover first. As Godzilla and Shinji stare down Ghidorah, Godzilla seems to have an idea. It charges up and blasts its beam, although not at Ghidorah, but at Shinji instead. The beam hits Unit 1, and instead of damaging it, it begins to mutate it. This is the titular G-Cell Awakening. Unit 1 becomes a feral fusion of the Eva and Godzilla, just like those toys we looked at forever ago. I told you they'd come up. The now mutated Unit 1 rushes King Ghidorah, blocking the gravity beams with its hands. Once he closes the gap, Shinji unleashes his new power and creates his own atomic breath. And then the animatronic pops up, and we don't really see what happens after that, because if the game gave you any sense of closure at all, you might stop gambling, and you really need to never stop gambling. But despite that, that is my theoretical endpoint for the first game. Ghidorah being destroyed or scared off by G-Cell Awaken Unit 1, Godzilla leaves Tokyo 3, and Gendo Ikari's plan is one step closer to completion. This is partly based on everything I just mentioned and the opening of the second game, where the status quo seems to have been temporarily restored, give or take a few details. But before we move to that, what's Rei been up to? Yeah, remember how I said there was another scene that I can't quite place temporally, and how it's my favorite? Well, here it is. Either happening before the events of the game, or in between Ghidorah fights, or perhaps during Ghidorah fights after Asuka got thrown to the side by Godzilla, this right here is the reason for the season. The season of making this video. I like it a lot, okay? For reasons and by means that aren't really explained, King Ghidorah has captured Rei's heart. The signs come early while she and Asuka are still in their school uniforms. They get into an argument as Rei says something doesn't matter. Asuka asks her to wait, but Rei tells her not to come any closer. Asuka asks what's happening, and Rei tells her to stay away. Asuka then asks what the hell is going on with her as she leaves. This is either left to fester, or they immediately move on to the actual cutscenes. It's hard to tell when it comes to these text-based cutscenes since there's not really any animation of what's happening. Anyways, what happens next is pure perfection. Rei explodes in a massive burst of energy that absolutely obliterates an angel and sends out waves of cross explosions. Again, the religious symbology doesn't mean anything, don't look into it. Revealing her new form, King Ghidorah Rei. Her new form comes with new powers, inspired by the monster who is controlling her. She can fly with her black energy wings. Her plug suit changed to black with several golden scaled embellishments, including on her boobs. Stay classy. She wields an immense amount of energy that I guess is an extension of her AT field, and she can summon 3 dragon heads made of that energy to attack her enemies. Ghidorah has preyed on her insecurities and made her push others away, hurting them to keep them away from her. Basically, King Ghidorah gave Rei rejection-sensitive dysphoria, but Asuka won't let that stand. Asuka gets in her robot and breaks through Rei's defenses to reach out to her and reclaim her heart that was stolen by King Ghidorah. That's not even me adding Yuri. The story mission is literally called Retrieve Rei's Heart that was captured by King Ghidorah. This shit is Yuri all on its own, and I'm totally here for it. In fact, I'm just gonna let you watch the whole scene with subtitles. Enjoy!
私は誰？私はレイ。綾波レイ。綾波レイ。貴重な話を聞きなさいよ。 ほらさっさと帰るわよありがとうほらあのバカが待ってる
Did you see that? Asuka broke through the walls that Rei put around herself and reached out to her. She let Rei know she wasn't alone, that someone does care about her, not just her, but Shinji too. Once Ghidorah's control began to break, Asuka just had to make her feelings clear to fully free Rei. She tears up at the realization, waking to Asuka's mech, her motherly aspects looking over her. Rei gets up and walks over to Asuka, but she's still weak. She stumbles, and Asuka catches her in a hug. Rei thanks her, and Asuka is surprised but pleased. She comforts her more while telling her that Shinji is waiting. Congratulations. This video was secretly about Yuri the whole time. I hope you enjoy. This right here is the emotional core of the game though. Well, actually the emotional core of the game is gambling, but I mean for the story that someone wrote for this gambling machine. Ghidorah is complacency. The kind of complacency that lets you seal yourself in a hole away from all your friends while things just deteriorate on the outside. If you just seal yourself away, it won't hurt as much. Our needles won't cause so much pain this way, you say as the cold consumes you and everyone you care about. But someone reaching out, extending their hand in friendship can break that mindset, can free you from your self-destruction. And it's Yuri. It's so Yuri. Yuri can save you only if you accept Yuri into your life. That's the message of Godzilla vs. Evangelion. Video over. Okay, no, not really. We have more to talk about. The climax of this amazing scene is scored with an original song called Teardrops of Hope by Yoko Takahashi, the original singer of the opening of Neon Genesis Evangelion. The song is in English and features lyrics like, "And I know you'll bring joy to my life. I stand with you every time you look into my eyes. A million words will not alter my mind. You won't leave me again. I don't know what you want me to do with this other than say, Yuri, Yuri, Yuri. It's Yuri, it's Yuri." There is an alternate scene where Asuka fails to break through to Rei and Rei puts up her AT field to reject her. We've all been there, Asuka. You'll get it next time. You just have to break through her walls. So, with the defeat of King Ghidorah, G-Cell Awakening ends and Second Impact G begins. In the time between games, NERV has built a new mech designed to fight Godzilla. It's fucking Mechagodzilla. They made Mechagodzilla. The Kiryu design, specifically. Now I must note that Kiryu in Godzilla against Mechagodzilla and Tokyo SOS is made with the bones of the original Godzilla, which does not exist in this universe. But I'm sure they could just make it without those, maybe? I don't know. Additionally, the Exilians have been plotting and scheming in the background. Oh. You don't know the Exilians? Did they fly past your head when I mentioned them earlier in the video? Well, the Exilians are alien conquerors from Planet X, a planet on the opposite side of our solar system in the fiction of the Godzilla movies. They show up in two movies, Invasion the Astro Monster and Godzilla Final Wars, as well as many of the games because they are the most iconic aliens in the franchise. Nobody's using the Kelox or the M-Space Hunter Nebulans or the Simians from Black Hole Planet 3 for some reason. It's all about the Exilians. The design of the Exilians in this game most closely resembles the 60s version, like that Rei figure. So I'll focus on that version. These aliens are ruled by a controller who runs their computer, which seems to calculate most of their decisions for them. They have a huge amount of technology, including the ability to control kaiju, but they lack water, which is why they want our planet.
Man, if it was air conditioned, I'd live in it. Gold!
But to them, gold's not as precious as water is.
Yeah, Planet X has run out of water.
They used Ghidorah, Godzilla, and Rodan to try and conquer the Earth, but once their mind control was broken, Godzilla and Rodan beat Ghidorah's ass and saved the day. Here they seem to be planning something similar, having revived Rodan, Gigan, and Biollante to conquer the Earth. Wait, what? Reviving monsters that never existed in this canon is a hell of an undertaking. I'm impressed. So yeah, this right here kind of makes the decent fit of Shin Godzilla and Evangelion a lot more complicated by adding in more Godzilla monsters in an attempt to draw more interest from Godzilla fans. Gigan and Rodan both appear to be from their Final Wars incarnations, while Biollante has unfortunately only appeared in one film ever in the Heisei era continuity. Final Wars perhaps gives us a good path to follow here though. Final Wars takes a sort of everything is canon and nothing is approach. although it only really includes Showa-era monsters. It doesn't make specific references to any film, meaning nothing contradicts, but it relies on the audience's familiarity with the whole Godzilla franchise to get away with not introducing any of the monsters in any detail. That's also where Second Impact G lies. What lies before the start of G's Cell Awakening, who knows? But Shin Godzilla happened, Evangelion happened, and Rodan, Gigan, and Biollante existed, and that's all you need to know. This does also mean we can more heavily rely on the movies we know these kaiju from to explore their identity, which is helpful. Thank God I can pull from an actual movie that has something to say instead of just a goddamn pachinko machine. Also, apparently Shinji, Rei, and Asuka have been told to study Godzilla, which makes me wonder what movies' continuities would be in those books they're reading from. Being able to know that would probably just make me more confused though. Now let's talk about the plot of the game. This time around, I'm pretty sure the Yuri happens at the beginning. It's basically the only part of the timeline that makes sense to place it in, so let's go ahead and talk about it as much as I'd love to save it for the end again. The Exilian invasion starts subtly, with the revived Biollante invading the city with its roses. Asuka sees one, and drawn in by its beauty, reaches out to touch it. Every rose has its thorns, however, and this one cuts Asuka's hand, a beautiful symmetry with how her mother wanted to cut her to pieces after her mental break. That cut, tended to by Shinji, allows Biollante to enter into Asuka's system and capture her heart. Again, words can't quite do this justice, so just watch what happens next for yourself.
何よイチャイチャしちゃってあれ何かしらうわー綺麗リーチ嫌い嫌い嫌い嫌い嫌い大嫌い大丈夫一人でやれるわえなんなのよやめて私の中に入ってこないで笑えるんだ
And this here is what I have been obsessed with for months. This cutscene is beautiful, wonderful, Yuri, and is absolutely full of emotion and meaning. All for a fucking gambling machine. It makes me so mad. I'm absolutely feral about this. Okay, let's break it down. Asuka's pricked finger allows Biollante to capture her heart in much the same way as Ghidorah did with Rei's. But Biollante and Asuka's damage are different from Ghidorah and Rei's. While Rei builds up walls between herself and others because she sees herself as disposable, Asuka builds up walls of intense jealousy. Her trauma with her mom has made her crave recognition more than anything. Being seen as a fellow human being is her greatest wish, which is why she conflicts so often with Shinji, who can't get out of his own mind enough to truly see others as their own human beings with their own thoughts and problems. And while Ghidorah is a being of conquest, just taking advantage of a hole in the armor of the Eva pilots, Biollante is a product of genetic manipulation of Godzilla cells, a rose, and a woman, the daughter of the scientist that made it. That daughter was killed by corporate espionage, shot dead in pursuit of the valuable Godzilla cells. And with the inclusion of her DNA, so too did her soul move into the monster. And it seems to have made her very mad. She attacks corporate saboteurs who again attack the lab and fights Godzilla multiple times, trying in fact to devour it whole. Biollante isn't really an evil monster. Those corporate agents had it coming, and she saved Japan from Godzilla and then just left. But under the controls of the Exilians who revived it, Biollante uses her rage to control Asuka. Asuka's jealousy, Biollante's anger, they turn to hate. Biollante Asuka hates. She hates everyone at Nerve, she hates Shinji, she hates Rei, she hates everyone and everything, ready to destroy them all to make them pay for the turmoil inside her. This manifests physically as one of Asuka's eyes turns into a rose, literally and metaphorically limiting her ability to see depth and nuance, and she becomes engulfed in thorny rose vines that become Biollante. Biollante threatens to destroy the city, and its toothy vines will keep away everyone. Well, everyone except for Rei. Rei's been there before. She knows what it's like to be so lost in yourself that a giant monster can take control. And she still has those King Ghidorah powers. So Rei unleashes King Ghidorah Rei with no mind control this time to break through the defense Biollante has put around Asuka. Now her wings are a resplendent gold while her plug suit retains its normal white color. Rei promises to protect Asuka, but Asuka can't see clearly. She lashes out at Rei, calling her a spoiled brat just like in her worst moments of the show. But Rei knows this is the same girl who reached out to her when she needed it, so she presses on. She reminds Asuka that not only is she here for her, but so is Shinji. Asuka's not alone, and her bandaged wound is proof positive of this. It reminds her, shakes her from her haze of self-loathing, and she reaches out for Rei. They embrace, and they, dang it, almost kissed. Damn it, let them kiss, cowards. Then the slot machine reminds you that you are in fact gambling, as the help of a trusted loved one dissolves Biollante's hate away from Asuka. The monster peacefully turns into golden spores and floats off into space, just like in the movie. The spirit has been exorcised, now free to peacefully pass on to the other side. Hopefully those spores don't end up in a black hole or something, or else, not good. As Biollante disintegrates around them, Asuka stretches and removes the bandage from her now healed finger. Rei asks to head back, and Asuka agrees, but wants to make it clear that she's not going to thank Rei for helping her. It's only natural, after all, they're partners. Rei's face lights up, and my Himajoshi heart soars. Congratulations. This is a beautiful resolution to what started in the first game, allowing these girls who don't get a lot of time together in the original show to break through each other's barriers and become true partners. And maybe, just maybe, a little bit more. It's a Partners to Partners arc, if you know what I'm saying. The scene is also scored with an original song for the game, Gathering, sung by the voice actor of Rei. That's right, they got a composer to write an original song and got Rei's voice actor to sing it, all for this Pachinko machine. And it only plays for this one scene as far as I can tell. That's how much they care about this Yuri here. And if you still don't believe me that it's Yuri, why don't we take a look at these lyrics real quick? I only want to embrace you. Still, I only think of you. I want to save you, that's all ready to give up everything. This is a song sung by Rei's voice actor, only used in the scene where Rei saves Asuka. There is literally no straight way to interpret this. Come on! Anyway, these two cutscenes are really cute and I like them a lot. The people writing these Pachinko machines seem to really care about these two girls in particular. Like the fact that they have the most elaborate cutscenes in the game with new original animation, and in the case of the second one, new 2D animation and an original song to go with it, shows how much these two scenes are the highlight of their respective games. A great amount of attention to detail went into crafting the Yuri of these Pachinko machines, more so than anything else in them, it seems. I find that interesting, and I think my fellow Himajoshis in the audience will be similarly enthused. If only all this Yuri wasn't a trap to get you gambling. But that's why I'm making this video, so you don't have to. Also, apparently the Pachinko machine randomness can result in Asuka failing to transform, just to tease you and get you to gamble more. This seems to be pretty rare. Usually the cutscene just happens as normal if it appears, based on all the footage I've watched. But apparently sometimes Asuka just goes, oh, never mind, I'm normal now. She's just like me for real. There's also a fail state in the pivotal Yuri scene where Rei misses Asuka's hand and Asuka snaps back under Biolante's control. She uses her AT field to repel Rei and the day is lost. And of course the AT field comes out in that moment. Just like for Rei, it's so perfect that the fail state for both of these involves their literal walls coming up. It's like poetry. It rhymes. So with Biolante defeated, there's still a lot of kaiju to deal with and 4 Eva pilots to deal with them. Luckily, Nerve has that Mechagodzilla they built to help. Oh, the Exilians took control of it. Okay, so now there's 4 kaiju and 4 Evas. I guess it's time to split up. Rei takes on Rodan, who has been attacking aerial vehicles. Asuka goes to some sort of factory to take on Gigan. Mari takes on the new enemy of Mechagodzilla in the outskirts of town, and Shinji takes on his old friend Godzilla. Of course, Godzilla wouldn't be here without reason, and the reason will soon become apparent. Rei's fight with Rodan starts with her using a sniper rifle to bring the kaiju out of the sky and onto the ground. Once there, Rodan pulls up the power lines of the city, causing them to whip away Rei's rifle if the slot machine doesn't find a match. I don't know how that would work at all, but it is pretty cool, so just forgive it. If the gun isn't whipped away, Rei takes a shot before they reach her and either hits or Rodan dodges out of the way. If Rodan does dodge though, you can always just try to do a point-blank sniper rifle shot. That'll work too. Otherwise, Rodan gets distracted by something called a direct energy weapon, maybe a reference to the Maser tanks of classic Godzilla films, and Rei is able to grab another gun with a blade and charge Rodan. While Rodan is able to block one attempt, the second charge gets through, and Rei runs the blade right through Rodan's chest. There goes my boy. Asuka finds herself in close quarters with Gigan, who seems intent on destroying a factory that, considering the size, was probably used to build one of the many mechs involved in this war. Asuka saves a factory worker from Gigan's rampage and defends herself from falling rubble caused by Gigan's beam. That beam is called the Scattered Light Beam Gigarium Cluster, by the way. Isn't that awesome? Asuka has a shield and a gun, which are going to be useful against a creature that is, oops, all weapons. She fires her gun against Gigan, but Gigan blocks the rounds with its bloody chainsaws. By the way, have you noticed that Gigan has its chainsaws instead of the hooked appendages, which are called bloody triggers in Final Wars and hammer hands in the Showa era? This is interesting since the chainsaws are added later in Final Wars after Gigan is destroyed by Godzilla, and then they try upgrading it to fight more. I think the reason the creators chose to do this is because, 1, chainsaws are cool and you could do cool scenes like this. And 2, the projectile hooks that the bloody triggers could shoot out might have been pretty hard for the Eva units to deal with, and more importantly, a tricky thing to animate. In story though, the fact that Gigan has its upgrades plays into the fact that it was revived. Another instance where you have to not think about how much incongruity there is in having both Final Wars and Shin Godzilla be canon at the same time. Like, even tonally, Godzilla Final Wars is a movie where they call stuff the Scattered Light Beam Gigarium Cluster, or Bloody Triggers, while Shin Godzilla is the type of movie where bureaucracy inhibits your abilities to respond to a monster that just moves slowly forward. Anyways, Gigan has plenty of means to fight at range, including the bladed slicers which shoot out of its shoulder blades right at Asuka. At this point, one of 3 things could happen depending on the slots. In the first path, one takes out her gun while the other is blocked by her shield temporarily until it manages to slice through. Those shields are sturdy as hell, so that's pretty damn impressive. Asuka, not to be outdone, grabs the shield part that was taken off and throws it at Gigan, cutting off its head just like in Final Wars. In another path, Gigan blocks the shield piece with its chainsaws, and Asuka rushes in with her shield. Gigan attacks it with a chainsaw, but Asuka pushes through and slams the shield into its face. Gigan recovers and uses the other chainsaw to hit the shield, but Asuka brushes that aside as well and gets her gun right up into Gigan's face, where she fires until its visor breaks, and Gigan falls to the ground and explodes. In yet another path, the bladed slicer did hit Asuka, but a nitrogen bomb dropped directly on Gigan's head gives Asuka the time to recover. As Gigan collapses to the ground covered in flames, Asuka unsheathes a sword. Gigan doesn't bother getting up, instead using its chainsaws as treads to rush towards Asuka. That momentum allows it to launch forward and lift its chainsaws to clash with Asuka's sword. If Asuka wins the struggle, she pushes through to chop Gigan's head off yet again. Mari's fight with Mechagodzilla takes place on the outskirts of the city, allowing her to slide into the scene down a mountain after preventing a death with her sniping skills. Mechagodzilla launches a volley of rockets at the approaching mech, which can hit her and knock her down. Luckily, nearby tanks will distract the monster in that case, until its beam tears through them. Mari gets up and grabs an electrical tower as a weapon, causing Mechagodzilla to open up its absolute zero cannon in its chest. Mari charges and stabs the tower into the chest cavity, ultimately destroying the creature before she could be instantly flash frozen by the cannon. Lucky it did that to give her a big glowing weak point, just like the angels. If she instead dodged the missiles, she targets Kiryu's missile launchers with her gun and explodes them, destroying the metal monster. It's funny how so many of these have like so many different timelines from different failure points, and some have like 2. I'm not really sure what to do with all of these, but I do believe that these more elaborate fights are canon to some degree. Just gotta pick your favorite path, I guess. Choose your own adventure. Also, it is possible that I'm missing some of the fail points because what you see is random. It's all gambling. I'm doing my best here to connect all the dots, but only the devs of the game know the true extent of the cutscenes. Also, all those weapon call-ins from the last 3 fights have been from G-Force, so there's yet another mention of G-Force, once again bringing in Heisei era Godzilla continuity in a game that doesn't have the Heisei era Godzilla. I swear they just wanted it to be a Heisei era Godzilla, but they had to make it Shin Godzilla to fit with the Hideaki Anno theme. I swear. As a lead into the fight between Godzilla and Shinji, we have this cutscene where Shinji in his school clothes sees Godzilla cause a massive explosion while the unconscious Unit 2 and Unit 0 lay sprawled out around him. Shinji runs into danger as civilians flee the opposite way until he reaches the kneeling Unit 1. No clue what caused the lead up to that scene, but it is very evocative. Godzilla has 2 different fights, which I can't exactly place chronologically, but it's not a huge problem. They all happen in this general time area I've marked out here. That first fight happens directly after that lead-up cutscene, even though they can both also appear independently of each other. Here, Shinji is alone against Godzilla. As the two face off, Godzilla begins to spout fire that will slowly turn into its famous beam. Shinji has one of the heavy-duty shields used to block the beam of an angel, which he uses to withstand Godzilla's fire. It might knock him back, at which point the Spear of Cassius lands in front of Shinji for him to use, destroying a few city blocks in the process. Not sure who put that there. Shinji readies the spear as Godzilla trains its beam on him. The spear is able to split the beam, and Shinji chucks it at Godzilla. If it hits, it blocks Godzilla's beam, forcing it to use the rest of its beam strength to blast it out, carving a crevice in the cloud at the same time. If it fails to make it all the way, it gets deflected into the air where Shinji can catch it and plunge it into Godzilla personally, while dodging Godzilla's beam attack, which will again rip open the clouds. If Shinji manages to withstand Godzilla's fire, he launches into a Kamen Rider kick against it. Godzilla refocuses the flames, which can repel Shinji. If it does, Shinji quickly recovers with an uppercut to Godzilla before it can redirect the flames again. So many branching paths here. The other fight features all 3 main series Eva units trying to stop Godzilla, with Rei and Asuka holding it back while Shinji does a Kamen Rider kick to Godzilla's face. Or you can end up with just 2 Evas and Shinji punches Godzilla instead. If you succeed, Shinji wonders if Godzilla is truly your enemy. Watching Shin Godzilla go flying from all these punches and kicks is extremely strange. This guy seems way too sturdy for that. Look at him go! Wow! He is just flying. At some point in the fight between Godzilla and Unit 1, Shinji's question about Godzilla's intentions are answered. Down from the heavens comes Kaiser Ghidorah with its own angel core. Now, is Kaiser Ghidorah an upgraded form of King Ghidorah or another member of the same species? No one knows. It's not super important. Like, based on how Kaiser Ghidorah functions, it doesn't even feel like the same species, much less the same being, but thematically, in this game where both exist but not at the same time, it might as well just be an upgrade of Ghidorah back for revenge. At this point, you might be wondering what's going on with the Exilians and why they just come out of nowhere. Well, this game actually does have an answer for you, and it's that they've been here all along. It turns out that the Gendo Ikari we saw in the first game was actually a sus imposter, an Exilian in disguise who got rid of Gendo to take his place and pave the way for King Ghidorah's invasion. Guess that's one thing that didn't go according to plan. In the wake of Ghidorah's defeat, imposter Gendo ordered the construction of Mechagodzilla, ostensibly to protect Tokyo 3 from Godzilla, but actually to fight Godzilla and take over the Earth. Kaji was beginning to catch up on the swap, but the Exilian plan wasn't ready to be put into action. Kaji leaves a voice message for Misato and goes to investigate, never to be heard from again. That's right, they changed Kaji's death to be because of the Exilians. What the fuck? Unfortunately for the Exilians, Gendo is not actually dead. I lied about something not being according to Gendo's plan. It's always according to Gendo's plan. He's been allowing the imposter to take his place as part of his plan, but now that the fight with Ghidorah has forced Unit 1 to become infused with Godzilla's cells, he doesn't need them anymore. This was actually first introduced in the first game where we had a little teaser cutscene showing us that Gendo had been replaced and then giving us a little to be continued, just trying to wet our whistle for the second game. Much like Gendo, I had a secret plan to hide this from you until now so I could have a surprise reveal. But now Gendo and I are both done with the ruse. He shoots the imposter in the head and resumes command. But apparently he didn't do anything to stop the Exilians from taking over Mechagodzilla. I don't know why, it's just part of the plan. It's always part of the plan, it just must be part of the plan. Well, except for exactly Kaoru, the only person who seems to be able to dissect Gendo's plan and work to stop it. And he's got a Mechagodzilla of his own. Yep, that's the theoretical Nerve Mechagodzilla design we looked at forever ago, adapted from that figure into this game. Those initial figures and merch were all super influential on the shape that this crossover game would take. Shame it doesn't actually do anything in the game though, this is all you get. Now, as far as I can tell, there's no real conclusion to the story, not even like the pseudo-conclusion of the first game. The closest we get is this scene from the trailer, which isn't even in the game itself. Kaiser Ghidorah's appearance draws the attention of both Shinji and Godzilla, who go on the attack. Kaiser Ghidorah's AT field blocks Shinji's Kamen Rider kick, and Ghidorah lifts and throws Unit 1 in the air with his gravity beams. Godzilla's beam stops the assault, but Ghidorah retaliates. Luckily, Shinji has recovered and can block the gravity beams with his own AT field, while Godzilla charges up again. But Godzilla just can't pierce Ghidorah's AT field. Shinji activates the G-cells again, this time independent of Godzilla, creating a giant cocoon of Godzilla flesh. Unit 1 bursts out, transformed once more. I initially thought the conclusion to the narrative would be found in a section of the game that was labeled Top Secret, to be released January 11th, 2025. I spent a while trying to track down footage of that specific segment just to see what the conclusion for this story would be. And I did find footage of this rarely recorded part of the game. It's an extra game mode that they held off on launching that seems to consist of AVA units trying to stop the monsters from coming ashore from the ocean. That's it. It's strange for basically all of them, except for Godzilla itself, but it's especially strange for Kaiser Ghidorah. Not used to seeing Ghidorah come out of the ocean at all. I think these are all non-canonical, though it's hard to tell since they have fairly elaborate animations. If they were canon, it would be very strange and still wouldn't really help conclude the story. I did discover more footage of Kaoru's Nerve Kiryu while looking through this though, so that's cool at least. Otherwise, I just don't really care about these too much. But I thought I should probably tell you about them to complete the experience. As a final thing I didn't really have room for anywhere else, there's a special movie that shows Misato's pet penguin thing looking through a photo album. It's cute, but it didn't really fit in the flow of the script anywhere else with all the plot happening. It also doesn't really have any Godzilla in it. It could literally be from any Evangelion thing as far as I'm concerned. I spent so long looking for this before I knew exactly what it was because a lot of the Pachinko YouTube channels just cut out the special movies. I don't know why, they take like 30 seconds, but I guess that is still 30 seconds where you're not gambling. So here's a rare bit of fluff from this game for you, I guess. I also want to talk a little bit about the music for the games. Most of it comes from Evangelion or Shin Godzilla, which makes sense. Why would you commission a new score for a Pachinko game that mostly intends to cash in on familiarity? The funny aspect to this is that Shin Godzilla features a lot of musical tracks that are inspired by Evangelion music, so the soundtracks blend well together. There is some Akira Ifukube music in here, but only the tracks that also appear in Shin Godzilla as a reference to the classic films. A funny addition to this is a stinger the first game uses that features a snippet of the famous Godzilla march that then transitions to the stinger of Cruel Angel's thesis. When I first heard this, I busted out laughing. It's incredible. As for the rest of the soundtrack, well, you already know that they had one original track made, but what if I told you there are 3 more? Yeah, they had 3 songs made for the first game and 1 for the second. Isn't that crazy? The first game features Teardrops of Hope by Yoko Takahashi, the performer of Cruel Angel's Thesis, Shuketsu no Hate ni and Shuketsu no Toki Territory, both by Megumi Hayashibara, Rei's voice actor yet again. So not only do they have her voicing Rei in the game, but they also got her to do 3 original songs, including Gathering from the second game, which we covered earlier. Pachinko machines are so much money that they can just do that apparently. At least she's getting paid. And that's it for the Pachinko machines. I don't know if they're planning something else to conclude the story or what. It's been 6 months at the time of writing since that update, but the update was just an extra game mode with no new story aspects. I guess we could just assume, and then Unit 1 and Godzilla win. But like, what does that struggle look like? How does that impact the characters? What is Gendo's plan here? What is Kaoru planning to do in return? And what kind of themes could the finale solidify? We just won't know unless they do have a finale or a third game prepared to be released later. If they do, I'll do an update video to cover that, but until then, this is what we have to work with. So let's break it down. both G-Cell Awakening and Second Impact G, and this whole crossover as a whole. These games are fascinating to me. They seem to largely understand the franchises they're dealing with and even thematically merge the two in ways that are frankly genius. But at the same time, as pachinko machines, they prey on the very otaku instinct that Anno's oeuvre seeks to break you out of. They need you to be obsessive about your fandom so they can get your money. How much money did all the people I watched and pulled footage from gamble away while filming those videos? Pachinko makes up 2/3 of Evangelion's billions of dollars in revenue. Anno and his studio directly profit from this exploitation. How do you deal with this inherent disconnect? I imagine Anno's answer would be that the money allows him and the people he funds to make more art, which is an answer for sure. I don't know that it satisfies me though, in the wake of just how devastating gambling can be. I don't know, I just don't know. The fact that seeing all the cutscenes I've talked about here requires hours and hours of gambling, the fact that so many of these channels are cutting them out so you can get a pure, unfiltered stream of gambling, the fact that it just never ends. It all just makes me feel a little ill, frankly. It's part of why I wanted to make this video, to make it easier for you to find out all this for free, to soothe your otaku soul without exposing you to the harms of gambling. And honestly, I think that lack of ending is part of the exploitation. Having a sort of ending to the first game made me feel like I was able to see everything. I spent a lot more time watching footage of the second game, trying to see if I missed anything. Imagine if I had been gambling to find all of this. If there's no ending, the gambling never ends. It sucks. More directly thematically, Pachinko Godzilla vs. Evangelion really extends the ideas from Real 4D, which itself used the themes of Shin Godzilla and the History of Godzilla franchise to extend the themes of Evangelion. Making Ghidorah more angel-like puts it in line with the Angels of Evangelion thematically, while Godzilla becoming even more of its previous incarnations really allows it to fit the role of Earth's protector, as it has so often in other movies. This results in a story about overcoming the walls that separate us to work together and make the world a better place. Several times throughout the game, the Eva pilots need help not only from each other, but also from Nerve and of course Godzilla itself. Or, as I later found out, G-Force, apparently. This is most obvious in the Yuri scenes where Rei and Asuka emphasize how much they need not only each other, but also Shinji in this dark and dangerous world. And Mari is there too. Her presence is very light in these games for some reason. It feels like the games mostly just forget she exists, but like not entirely. It's very strange having it kind of in between ignoring her and including her. Weird. The Exilian invasion of Earth represents any number of challenges we face as a society, rather than as an individual. While the original Evangelion deals mostly with our individual problems, the addition of Godzilla expands it to society-wide problems, as Godzilla has usually focused. So we end up with an interesting look at how personal issues of communication and understanding can complicate society-wide problems, and the only way we can solve these society-wide problems is by overcoming our own issues and joining together as fellow human beings. And it seems to me like the narrative found in these stupid pachinko machines is the ultimate culmination of all the crossover material that came before, in addition to a synthesis of Anno's two works. I don't know what writing teams worked on the Real 4D or the pachinko machines, or any of the other crossover examples for that matter. Credits for these sort of things seem to be hard to come by. Because of the specific way in which certain concepts and themes carry through, I wouldn't be surprised if there was some crossover in creative teams, if only just some supervising staff from Kara. At the very least, there's been enough care and thought put into these games that they pull from what came before and play with the ideas of the works they're combining instead of just smashing toys together. And all of that in a gambling machine, which absolutely profits from smashing those toys together. This is what draws me to this crossover, this inherent contradiction. This video is a product of that fascination, even though in the end I'm not quite sure what to make of it. Making art in a capitalist world necessitates compromises, but do those compromises need to be this steep? I guess it depends on what your goals are. Anno is not just trying to keep himself alive, but also his employees and the art that they make. He wants to help other artists make a name for themselves as well, hence why he tried to open up Evangelion to other creatives. But is even that worth the kind of exploitation that pachinko machines create? I would have a hard time agreeing with that myself. After all this, you might be thinking that analyzing pachinko machines and theme park rides for thematic content is silly and pointless. Or you may be thinking that cataloging all the happenings of them and trying to dissect some canon from it all is silly and pointless. You're probably right on both counts. But when it comes to a seemingly frivolous crossover between such meaningful works, I can't help but see something more there. and hopefully now you might see it too. Godzilla has been my constant companion for basically my whole life, with each film in the series having something to offer in my opinion. Evangelion I only watched recently, but it's become near and dear to me as I deal with my own internal walls. The process of creating this video was almost therapeutic in a way, as I dissected my feelings on both of these franchises and the ways they interact with each other in this crossover. I don't expect it to be therapeutic for you necessarily, but I hope you enjoyed it all the same, and maybe it made you think a little bit more about the themes of our beloved Tokusatsu media. Thanks for watching. Hey there, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I've got a lot more for you if you want them. Just hit that subscribe button and ring the bell to get notifications. I'd also appreciate if you left me a like and a comment and maybe shared the video around with your friends. You can also follow me on all the usual social media sites. Just check out my website in the description below for more info. My videos are funded by my patrons, Ko-fi subscribers, and YouTube members, whose names you'll see scrolling by in the credits here. For just $1 a month, you too could find yourself here, trapped in my end screen for all eternity. In particular, I'd like to thank Jeremy Coatney, Frog Prince Michael, Fleekill, Haru Hayes, the Almighty Ferret Lord, and Fire Mizumi. A big thanks to all my other patrons and to my little community as a whole. Remember to be kind to yourselves, be kind to others, and have a wonderful whatever time it is for you. Bye-bye.